I am joined by Rania Khalek. Rania, how are you today?
I'm good. How are you doing?
I'm doing great. Listen, thanks so much for joining me at the last second. I wanted to pull in as many voices as I could to discuss this from different angles because, again, I think it's very important for people to realize that what happened over the weekend, really gives you an insight into the great divide that is in the quote unquote Democratic Party, or I would say anyone who is absolutely not a Republican, because that's such a broad spectrum these days. But listen, I wanted to come to you specifically because you bring a great voice in terms of a critique, a feminist critique of not only just this situation, but of Hillary Clinton and this false dichotomy of either you are are with Hillary Clinton or you're not a feminist. So I want to just throw it to you really quickly and tell me your perspective on what's been going on and how you tie this into the race in general.
Well, I mean, what's been going on is that there's a trend that's been taking place. It's been mostly isolated to social media, but a trend that's been taking place where people claim that disagreeing with them on places like Twitter and Facebook is the equivalent of harassment. And that's been ongoing for a couple of years now. And it's something that I've been very, very critical of since it's been a big issue. And it's sort of been isolated to the left on social media. But what we saw happen recently with the firing of Matt Bruenig from Demos is that this trend is being exploited by powerful, influential and prominent supporters of Hillary Clinton, who are basically using it to say that anybody who is disagreeing with our ideas or our stances and positions and decision to vote for Hillary Clinton and support her and advocate for her is harassing us, especially if they're a man. And it's Bernie Bros. You know, this ties into the whole idea of Bernie Bros, which is a completely manufactured controversy in itself. But yeah, they're all these Bernie Bros are just trolling us and harassing us. And now, you know, the Nevada thing happened where the Democratic Party behaved very undemocratically, and because of that, there was a backlash, and a couple people left some nasty phone calls and messages towards the Roberta Lang, the woman who was responsible for that. And so then that sort of ties into this as well, where those people were every, you know, Bernie supporters in general were, you know, were basically accused of death threats, rape threats, and of being, you know, like basically rapists, like rape threats. And so we see all these things tying together with what happened with Matt Bruenig, where now you actually see him criticizing Neera Tanden, this president of CAP, this powerful woman, this influential woman in the Clinton campaign, and she basically just exploited this trend that's been ongoing where all these people then trolled Matt and decided, you know, and started calling him a serial harasser, and then anybody else who disagreed with him a serial harasser. And they're using the language
Go ahead, finish that
of
sentence,
rape.
and I want to jump in there. Go ahead.
Well, I'm just gonna, I mean, this is like the trend of this is they're using the language of rape and assault on women and misogyny, which people on the left and the liberals are, you know, that resonates with them, to smear people with zero evidence whatsoever, who are supporting Bernie Sanders and disagreeing with people who support Hillary Clinton, to smear them as like people who are provoking rape threats, who are even sending death threats and rape threats, and again with zero evidence. And so this is really, I mean, this is really, really troubling because, and we can talk about a little bit. I mean, you wanted to say something, so go ahead and jump in.
Let me jump in there but I'm glad I stopped and let you finish that, because that to me is the most disturbing thing about this, is that they are using the language of rape and harassment, and it's something that causes a visceral response that whether they have evidence of this or not, right, they can just make this claim. And now, to be sure, it really undermines people who are legitimately threatened and harassed online because people are simply coming after them to harass them, versus someone who is having a political disagreement with you online, and now you have minimized the plight of people who are legitimately harassed online, and not over a political opinion, but simply because you're a woman. There is so much harassment that takes place. To see them just kind of co-opt that narrative just for political points, And like you said, without any substance, no evidence. Like somebody called me out and said, well, you shouldn't ask for, what do you think about this? Because somebody tried to call me out about this weekend. You shouldn't ask for evidence of harassment. Really? We're talking about political harassment. We're not talking about sexual harassment. We're not talking about rape. We're talking about the accusation of political harassment. What do you think about that?
But I gotta say to even that, I understand this need, and it's a good thing. The idea that, if a woman makes a claim or anybody makes a claim of sexual harassment, it should be taken seriously and not dismissed.
Right.
That's what we mean when we say we should believe women. Not we should believe women without asking for any evidence. I mean, the idea is, yes, please open an investigation and look into this and take it seriously. And that is being completely, like you said, undermined with this notion of just believe me without any evidence. I mean, even in a sexual harassment case, like an actual physical sexual harassment case,
right.
If there's an investigation, you need evidence to prove that somebody did what they're being accused of.
Right.
And so there's nothing wrong with asking for evidence. That's what we should be asking for. Yeah. But on top of that, what's really happening here is that prominent and influential supporters of Hillary Clinton are exploiting the idea of believing women in sexual harassment and online, and they're exploiting like the sort of panic that exists at the moment around online harassment to immunize themselves from criticism.
Yes.
And to change the subject of debate, to change it from a debate about the substance of policy differences and political differences to one about debating whether somebody's sexually harassing somebody's engaging in online abuse or not. Because now the debate's about completely ridiculous, absurd things that have nothing to do with what's actually happening with the election. On top of that, I will say, like, as I'm a woman who's I'm pretty well known online. I'm very active on the internet. I'm a writer, and I write about really controversial issues. Yeah. And because of that, I do experience a lot of online harassment and trolling. And at times, sometimes that does become like threats, although that's really rare. I mean, that's for me, and I do find that interesting that someone like me, who is, I'm pretty prominent on the internet. I don't receive the flurry of death threats and rape threats that seem to be like everywhere. Right. I'm not saying they don't happen. I just think that in this case it's a bit over exaggerated. But beyond that, I know I am somebody who does receive a lot of harassment. I've had to like file complaints with the FBI before because of specific threats I've gotten against me and my family for the kinds of stuff I write about. And so I understand that, and that's something I care about. And because I care so much about that being taken seriously, I am disgusted with the way that people who support Hillary Clinton are using this and exploiting this for their political agenda, while at the same time not caring about the fact that they're making a complete mockery of the actual harassment women like me experience on the internet. I mean, I'm just utterly appalled by this, because it's going to have, later on people are watching this and we know what they're seeing, especially people who already don't believe women. They're seeing, oh, see, they do lie. That's what they're seeing. They're seeing, oh, like, look what's happening on the left right now. I mean, this is fuel for the men's rights activist groups who already, are always looking for any piece of, any way to sort of prove the fact that women lie. Yeah. So, I mean, I'm really disturbed by that.
Let me point out how influential this individual, Neera Tanden, is. And again, these are names that maybe everyday people, or actually I know everyday people don't know these names, but this is what's happening in the background. And so the person who for which Matt got fired, Neera Tanden, she just got appointed today to be on the platform committee for the Democratic National Committee. She was appointed by Hillary Clinton. So she is a longtime supporter of Hillary Clinton, a longtime advocate for Hillary Clinton, and she has been rewarded with for all those years of support by being appointed to the DNC's platform committee, alongside of a couple of other people that I'll talk about later. But we're not just talking about somebody random on the internet. We're talking about someone with enough power to be appointed by Hillary Clinton, potentially the next president of the United States, to be appointed to the DNC platform committee. This person engaged in this type of behavior, and now we see the result of these accusations is the firing of it doesn't matter that he's young, but a young prolific writer who is extremely measured if you read if you want to get something hyperbolic, come see me, right? But if you want to get something that's straight about the data and succinct and really with very little pizzazz, there is, and I guess maybe that's not the right word because his writing does have pizzazz because of how it's prose. But Matt, that's Matt. He's very measured, very accurate, very data driven, and you have this extremely powerful individual who has stood behind Hillary Clinton on Capitol Hill when she's made speeches, who is running one of the largest think tanks for the for the left leaning side of American politics, and now she's been appointed by Hillary Clinton to this position on the DNC platform chair. We're not talking about somebody random. We're talking about a power play that did not like, Joan Walsh and the rest of them. The one thing I noticed about all of them across the board, Joy-Ann Reid, to your boy over at the Washington Post, Jonathan Capehart, none of them can handle one iota of critique without them believing they are being harassed or attacked by trolls. And I can't fathom for the life of me how they imagine they're going to stand up against somebody like Trump when they don't even have enough backbone to listen to a reasoned critique by somebody like Matt.
Because, this is completely, it's BS. Maybe they've deluded themselves into thinking they're actually being trolled, but this is behavior you engage in when you don't have an argument.
Yeah.
When you don't have an argument to the kinds of factual-based, evidence, data-driven arguments that somebody like Matt puts forward.
Yeah.
That's all you've got. All you've got is to say, I'm being harassed.
Yeah.
Because that changes the narrative to that instead of the actual debate at hand, and then you don't have to answer those things. Mm-hmm. It's being used again to immunize these people from critique and from having to actually defend their positions. Mm. And you're absolutely right. This is not something you're going to see in the general election because it's not something that can work against Donald Trump and his supporters. Right. The thing is that liberals, this does resonate with liberals. They're exploiting something and manipulating language that will convince maybe at least a slice of some progressives that this is a problem. I've seen it happening. People are believing that this is like seriously a thing where women, Neera Tanden, this influential woman, is being harassed by people who disagree with her. Yeah. But Donald Trump supporters, not so much. It's not going to work. These are people who aren't going to care. Right. But beyond that, it's just this is something that I'm seeing happening. In the UK is kind of where it started with the Labour Party over there. There's an insurgent candidate named Jeremy Corbyn, mm-hmm. who's oftentimes been compared to Bernie Sanders. Yeah. And after he was elected to head the Labour Party, which is like the equivalent of our Democratic Party, and he's like a progressive, there was a huge counter movement from the right wing of the Labour Party against him. And part of that had to do with calling his supporters abusers of women online. In one case, all these Labour MPs who were women who voted to bomb Syria received angry messages from Labour members about their vote for bombing Syria. And then these women who voted to bomb Syria turned around and said, I'm being harassed and receiving threatening messages after I voted to bomb Syria. It's ludicrous. Yeah. And this is, I think, what we're going to see going forward is we're going to see these elite, powerful, influential women like Hillary Clinton, like Neera Tanden, who's probably going to be her chief of staff or something along those lines in her administration, making insane, ludicrous claims to try and get out of being criticized for doing atrocious things that actually do abuse women, like bombing other countries and supporting death squads in Honduras that kill women like Berta Cáceres. There's more backlash towards online criticism of Neera Tanden than there has been towards Hillary Clinton for her support for that coup in Honduras that supported those death squads that then killed a female activist. Mm. So it's just stunning to watch this play out.
So what do we do, right? Because this is the exact case, right? You see the email that came from Neera Tanden basically saying that Libya should pay for their own destruction with their oil, right? Because we're living in a deficit world. This is an email. Go to The Intercept. You can read the entire article about it. But you have someone like that, and if we bring a critique to her over that preposterous, just ridiculous and disturbingly dangerous idea, then we are harassing her and we are being sexist, misogynist, Bernie bros. How do we get around this if Hillary Clinton wins and that entire regime of whatever you want to call them. I won't use any adjectives here to save my ass, right? But when they get in power, if they get in power, what do you do to fight back against this?
You know, I mean, it's one thing that, you know, we can do is point out the hypocrisy. I mean, Neera Tanden, one of the funniest things about this is less than a year ago, a few months ago, she hosted a friendly sit down with the right-wing race-baiting Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, somebody who calls Palestinians wild beasts, and somebody who, when he was running for re-election last year, got right-wingers to come out and vote by fear-mongering about the fact that, and this is like pretty much a direct quote, that Arabs were voting in droves and they're being bussed in by leftists. Yeah. She sat down and like hosted this guy in a very friendly atmosphere, asked him no tough questions. So I mean, it's interesting because these people, it's good to point out how people like Neera Tanden are only concerned about civility only when it benefits them, but otherwise they could care less. I mean, she could care less about Netanyahu's civility when she sat down and hosted him. The other thing is that we need to break through, we need to break down and really disprove and debunk this idea that it's men, it's predominantly men who are bringing these criticisms. There's a reason that they went after Matt Bruenig and not someone like me, who speaks the same exact way, if even like you mentioned, like I speak harsher towards these people than even Matt Bruenig does, but I'm a woman. Right. So I sort of, you know, the very fact that I'm engaging in this stuff, you know, acknowledging my existence as a Bernie supporter and as somebody who's debating your argument, debunks the idea that it's all just these misogynist men. So I think that that's a place too. I mean, we have to demand that these people acknowledge the women. Like, why aren't they, not just me, there's other women too. Like, why aren't they acknowledging our critiques?
But you know
why aren't they engaging with us? Of course. Exactly. I know exactly why. But I mean, these are the kinds of questions that we need to ask and put out there, because that it really just, you know, in a very easy, simple way helps debunk what's taking place here. I mean, just this weekend, I was on a panel. It was a panel made up entirely of women, and it was about Hillary Clinton and how she's a fake feminist, and her sort of, you know, her faux feminism, if you will, and what it means for feminism moving forward. It was basically an anti-Hillary panel. It was at Left Forum, and it was all women. And you know, it's the video of that's going to be out soon, and hopefully people will get a chance to watch that, because I think that that's like one way. I mean, people just need to see more visibility of women engaging in these debates. That's what you need to ask these people. Why are you ignoring? And same with, you know, I saw you ask this weekend. With Joan Walsh wrote this article saying, oh, you know, all Bernie Sanders movement is led by white people. Right. And that he's ignoring people of color by staying in the race because they all support Hillary Clinton. And you noted, hey, like, what about me? And you listed other people of color who are very supportive of Bernie Sanders. And that right there is something that no one will engage with you about.
Right. They completely ignore that conversation. If you ask that, they completely ignore it, because it will require them actually acknowledging the fallacy in their entire argument. But go ahead. I'm sorry.
Well, no, I mean, and I think it's also important to recognize that, like, we're like really insidery, right? Like, we watch these things play out because it's part of our job. But the vast majority of people, even people that maybe have been somewhat involved in campaigning for either one of the candidates, aren't necessarily watching what's playing out on Twitter and seeing this. So what's taking place right now is more to send a message to other people who are who have like loud voices, or who have big voices on this issue, other people who are prominent online and social media, in the media, to send a message that your livelihood could be at risk if you come after Clinton supporters. That's what this is about. So I don't think anybody's seeing this happening. At least maybe not a significant enough number of people are seeing this happening and deciding I don't support Bernie Sanders anymore. Right. You know, I don't think that's taking place. This is more about the sort of how the politics are going to play out amongst people like us, who are involved in this on a day-to-day basis.
And think about that, though. Like, think of the ramifications of that. This is no small thing, and I want to reiterate this. This is the silencing of a political dissidents, of political disagreements. This is authoritarianism. This is what you see in authoritarian regimes, where they silence political resistance and political opposition. And here in America, they're not going to do it by throwing you in jail. They're going to do it by taking your job, especially if your job is any way connected to the power structure that is the establishment of the political establishment, whether it be on the right or the left. If you talk against that system and they can't like marginalize you so that no one hears you, then they can take your job. that is no small thing. And I think one of the most terrifying things would be for us to sit and rest on our laurels or rest on the fact that this may not directly affect us and lose legitimate opposition voices, because without opposition, this doesn't work. Go ahead.
Well, that's the purpose of this too. The purpose of everything we've been seeing with this obsession with the Nevada, like trying to smear Bernie Sanders supporters as violent during the Nevada convention, to what's happening with Matt Bruenig. This is the Democratic Party, which is a corporatist party that's very anti-left at its core because of the people who run it, like the Clintons, especially when the Clintons are in charge. They're a very anti-left party, and they're sending a message to the left base that we don't want you. We are not going to give you a voice. We don't want you in our party. We want your votes, but we don't really care about them that much, apparently. But we want your votes, and we'll fearmonger about Trump to get them. But otherwise, you don't get anything. We don't want you in our party. It's a backlash towards the progressive populism that's coalesced around Bernie Sanders and that's trying to actually have an impact at the convention. Because at this point, it's like Hillary Clinton is so far ahead of him. It's not like she needs to do this to help her get more delegates. This is strictly about sending a message to the progressive base of the Democratic Party that you need to shut up. And so the last thing we should do is shut up.
Absolutely.
And that's why they're behaving in this authoritarian manner. Because, I mean, the people in charge, I guess, of the Democratic Party at the moment are a bunch of authoritarians. And the last thing I will add on that is that it's kind of sad because they're behaving like a parody of what the right thinks the left is, which is speech police.
Oh, God.
Right? Speech police who care who care about language, and that's exactly how they're acting. But they're just doing it towards us.
And they're empowering Donald Trump even more, because the more he can point out this type of behavior, and the more this type of behavior is legitimately seen by people on the right, the more they're going to feel that what they've been saying all along is true, even though it's not necessarily true. It's always some shades of gray in there somewhere. Rania, listen, thanks so much for joining me. Tell everyone how to get up with you and what you're working on.
Well, thanks as always for having me on. And yeah, you can follow me on Twitter at Rania Khalek. And I write for the Electronic Intifada. You can follow my work there, or you can check out my website, raniakhalek.com, where I try to regularly post my own podcast and all the work I'm doing elsewhere.
Awesome.
So yeah, thanks again so much for having me on. It's always great to have these conversations with you.
My pleasure. You have a great day. Thanks so much.